Welcome to this new segment that we haven't really decided what we're going to call yet, but I'm using it as a platform for us to discuss some stuff that perhaps in a regular class environment around the whiteboard or around the briefing, we don't normally have the time to discuss elements like this just because we want to keep people moving and we want to get them training. So this is a short format for us to just explore some concepts that hopefully as either an athlete or even as a coach you might find interesting to just think about on a little bit of a deeper level. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, or the first topic we're reviewing, is this idea of pacing. Just a quick history on pacing, if you will. I feel like in the early days of CrossFit, it wasn't even a word that you heard. Like no matter what the workout was, the goal was to go fast and keep going fast for as long as you could, and inevitably you'd slow down, but you just keep trying to go fast. And then as people became slightly more aware of just incorporating in pacing that you would see in any other sort of race type sport, especially in a competitive level in CrossFit, we saw our CrossFit Games athletes incorporate pacing more and more. And now you tend to hear about it in briefs from coaches pretty often. You definitely hear about it when we enter something like the open season and open workout drops, and people talk about, hey, you need to pace this and you need to make sure you find your pace with this. So I thought what I'd do is break down pacing and just give a little bit of an understanding of how you might assess a workout for pacing. And we are going to use an open workout, a workout that we did recently at Charge CrossFit, and just get an understanding of what you might consider when you decide on pacing. Just so we're clear on something, I think people often think that pacing should make the workout easier. It shouldn't do that. What it should do is make the workout basically as hard as possible, because what you're doing is going at the speed which is most sustainable for the entire duration of the workout. It's very painful to go out super hard and crash and burn, but it's even harder to hold a really consistent pace right on that cliff of, oh, if I go any further, I'm going to be in real trouble in terms of your pace. And that's what we want to find today. And this is the assessment we want to do. So we're going to use this workout, which is CrossFit Open Workout 11.5. So it's an oldie but a goodie, I might add. As many rounds as possible in 20 minutes of 5 power cleans, 10 toes to bar, and 15 wall balls. The power clean weight is not overwhelmingly heavy. That's sort of 65 kilos for men and 45 kilos for ladies. Toes to bar volume isn't crazy. The wall ball volume, height and weight is what you call regular. And 15 wall balls isn't too much, but it's a 20-minute AMRAP, so it requires a lot of pacing. A lot of people ask when we programmed this, like, hey, what was a good score for this workout? And keep in mind that this workout was some sort of 13 years ago now. However, I think sort of like a good gold standard for it, just in an affiliate environment, would be chasing down 10 rounds. And as I've sort of put here are some pacing requirements and planning and basic maths. If you wanted to do 10 rounds of this workout, you'd have to hold a 2-minute round, okay? Or 2-minute rounds, plural, that's very important. If you wanted to get 8 rounds in this workout, you'd have to hold 2.5-minute rounds. If you wanted to get 12 rounds, you'd have to be holding 1:40, and then 14 rounds at 1:25. I'm going to come back to this concept pretty frequently. People often look at the times required for a certain score and then look at one round and think, yep, I could definitely do a round in, for example, 1:40. Pacing isn't about what you can do for one round. It's about what you can do for 12 rounds in that instance, or 8 rounds, or whatever it might be. And that's the really challenging part about pacing, is that one round is not enough of a sample size for you to decide if you've got the right pace or not. You have to have some good intuition about your own fitness. So let's talk about trying to get 10 rounds in this workout and how we might break it down for pacing. And keep in mind, we're going to drill deeper than necessary here just to explore the concept. This is probably overthinking it, but maybe not for those of you that take the open really seriously. So 10 rounds at a 2-minute pace, what we're looking and playing around with is 120 seconds. You've got 120 seconds to do a round. So what I like to do with pacing is understand exactly how many seconds of actual work there is before I start to play around with how I can spread it out. 5 power cleans, I'm being pretty liberal with the times here. So, you could argue about what time 5 power clean takes, but the concept will still hold true. So 5 power cleans takes roughly 10 seconds. It doesn't, but if you tap and go at 5 power cleans, let's just say it takes 10 seconds. 10 toes to bar, unbroken, I've got that as 17 seconds. And then 15 wall balls, I've got as 28 seconds, roughly, okay? So add that all together, and to make up your 120-second round, you've got 55 seconds of actual work and then 65 seconds of rest or of chalking your hands or of contemplating life choices, whatever it might be. So there's a fair bit of time to play around with here, and this is how we're gonna, I guess, drill down into what the best strategy would be for somebody who's hoping to get 10 rounds in this workout. So where do you put the 65 seconds of rest? That's the big question. What we see time and time again, and I've got my theories as to why people want to do this, is that it's really tempting to finish the round as fast as possible, maybe not as fast as possible, but quite fast, so that there's lots of rest at the end. And I think part of that is like a little bit of a psychological thing, just like, hey, I need to convince myself that 2 minutes a round is really doable for me. So I'm going to go and do a minute 20 and then rest for 40 seconds. And the fact that I can do it in a minute 20 really gives me a good sense of hope that I can continue to hold 2-minute rounds. But if you think about that in the context of other sports that pace, that's absolutely ludicrous. Like think about the marathon, for example. Imagine how crazy it would be to run each kilometer significantly faster than you need to, and then wait at the end of that kilometer and be like, right, I've got 30 seconds of rest, and I'll just do that again 42 more times. Okay, extreme example, but really what you want to be doing is just holding under the pace and then being able to sustain that and keeping your heart rate down and keeping those waste products that can build up really, really low. So the example that I gave, I just said 120 and 40 seconds. An example of this might be a minute 17 and then resting for 43 seconds. And let me tell you, when I watch this workout, a lot of people finish that first round in under a minute 20 or under a minute 17. I can't emphasize enough, this is a great way to spike your heart rate and produce waste products you don't recover from. I watched a few people start with this, and let me tell you, 117 and 43, as in a work-rest ratio, very quickly, in about 3 or 4 rounds, turns into 151 and 9 seconds rest. It's amazing. A pace that feels really reasonable in round 1 seems almost impossible to hold 3 or 4 rounds later. True pacing would be allocating the rest as evenly as possible. This is going to seem excessive, but for somebody who is truly shooting for 10 rounds, and that is on the absolute ends of their capacity, this is effectively a strategy they could use. With the 5 power cleans, they could do a rep and rest 4 seconds after each rep, and that means the power cleans are going to take 25 to 30 seconds. Then they would rest 5 seconds after the 5th power clean and go into 10 toes to bar. For this athlete, just to keep their toes to bar fresh, I've designated 3 reps, rest 5 seconds, 3 reps, rest 5 seconds, 2 reps, rest 5 seconds, 2 reps. Now some of you are being like, what's the point of breaking those reps up? Let me tell you, 3-3, 2-2, for somebody who really is at the capacity of doing 10 rounds. In the back 5 rounds, that won't be easy. It'll feel pretty manageable in round 1, but that'll be a good strategy for somebody who really is at around that 10 round mark. Then they can rest for 5 seconds. Then with the wall balls, 8 wall balls, 5 seconds rest, 7 wall balls. That equals 35 seconds. That means they've finished a round in a minute 47, and they would have 13 seconds rest before they rinse and repeat. And I'm going to put to you that for the first 3 to 4 rounds, that will feel too slow. It almost should feel too slow. The challenge is, can you maintain that? And really, it's really tempting to think, right, well, if I can hold a minute 47 and I did it with this much rest, why don't I try and do a minute 20 and then go faster? But you've got to be disciplined to stick to your plan, and that's one of the tough things about pacing. You have to be committed to the plan. Okay. So why is it difficult to pace like I put in the last slide? Like why is it actually challenging to do that if when I put it on paper, it looks pretty straightforward? It requires absolute laser focus to the task, which gets difficult under fatigue. So you've got to be really dedicated to that. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to rest right now. At the first half of the workout, it's almost about being disciplined on the rest. And then on the second half of the workout, it's about being disciplined on the go. It will feel like overpacing for the first quarter or third of the workout. I think I've spoke to that a fair bit. Some people, and this is the third point that I think a lot of people will have in their heads, especially when they looked at how I asked the athlete to break up the toes to bar. Some people will find that starting sets of certain exercises is actually the most exhausting part. Toes to bar probably isn't a great example, but let's just use it anyway. You might find that once you get going on toes to bar, you're kind of like, hey, it's almost more exhausting to come off the bar and jump back up. So maybe 3-3-2-2 is excessive and actually more exhausting than doing 5 and 5. If you've got good toes to bar, only you will know that, but I still think you can pace that stuff out. It probably makes more sense if it's something like a shoulder to overhead. If we drop the bar and break it up too much, we'll be doing too many power cleans to get the bar onto our shoulders. So some key takeaways for you around pacing. If you are aiming for 10 rounds, don't take off at a 14-round pace. That goes for any workout. It sounds so simple, but it's the mistake we see time and time again. We'll watch it happen in the open. It's like, hey, you've done round one and you are literally on track to get the best score in the world right now. Do you think that's appropriate for you? Maybe don't phrase it to an athlete like that, but that's the reality that you'll be dealing with. Let's figure out how much time the actual work takes and then play around with what rest you have. Okay, because for some workouts, there is no pacing. And naturally, the shorter workouts, there is no pacing. The longer the workout, the more ridiculously slow the pace will feel at the start. I don't know if I should have used the word ridiculously slow, but if we're gonna do a 60-minute AMRAP, okay, extreme, the pace for the first 2 minutes is gonna feel almost like, hey, like I don't really feel like I'm working out. As you get into past the 15-minute mark, you're like, okay, light layer of sweat up, get into the middle stage, it's like, all right, cool, I found a rhythm, back 20 minutes, that's really all you've got. And that would be a well-paced, longer workout, and it won't feel the same for a 20-minute workout. It definitely won't feel the same for a 5-minute workout. Last thoughts on this. If you did overpace basically means if you went too slow, okay? You can make adjustments, as in go faster. But if you go out too fast in the middle of a 20-minute AMRAP, the adjustments will get made for you. What I mean by that is basically at that point in time, you will find yourself at some stage probably having to fall apart and really break things up. What I want to be really conscious of here is that in training, sometimes pacing isn't worth thinking about. Sometimes the best thing you can do is put yourself in through the hole or into a hole, I should say, and work through it. But if you want to practice pacing, a good way to practice it is probably to err on the side of caution and then put your foot on the accelerator as you get comfortable, rather than go out too fast, because once you go out too fast, you're no longer practicing pacing, you're practicing survival, okay? Right, as I said, the goal of these little segments will be to give you some information on concepts that we're really interested in, but perhaps don't have the time to chat through them around the whiteboard at the gym. Hope you found this one interesting, and we'll be doing them semi-frequently for you. Cheers.